Hello, everyone. Today is Sunday, August 6th, 2023. This is Mohammed Shilan coming to you from North Carolina with my co-host, Mr. Victor Mangum, who comes to you from England. I'm still trying to learn the name of his county. Eventually, I will get that. So, as usual, this is VOS. And so we try for just do the normal thing we can do every Sunday. That is interact with una. Just let's discuss issues of common interest, of national interest. National interest meaning Sierra Leone, specifically geared to Sierra Leone, and common interest meaning it concern we all. So now we know people who they listen to it, they know the basic rules of engagement. And the rules of engagement are very simple. Number one, be respectful to fellow callers. No, we're not to say not disagree, but put your disagreement in respectful and mild terms when you disagree. And be respectful to the host also. And then be observant of the time limitation. The reason for the time limitation, as I always explain, that because sometimes we get a lot of callers and some people can feel offended that they stayed on the line too long, we never were able to get to them. And because when you look at the flow of events and the logistic, if we get 5 callers and you are number 5, and each caller is being given 3 minutes to talk, it means by the time we get to you, 3 minutes plus 15 seconds wrap up time, it means before we get to you number 5, you will have spent 12 minutes holding. And then if you get a patient for hold that long, then we allow a caller for go be above and beyond the 3 minutes limit. It go be very unbearable for people, you the last person. And so suppose you are number 8, you are number 9, now the queue. So we try for be concerned, considerate, respectful of everybody. And so that's why we urge you now. When you call, try for, because we need to make una know say you only have 3 minutes. 3 minutes could be a long time for get your point across. If you don't prepare before you call. But if you call, decide how you want to present 10 questions then day, or you comment, you might spend a whole time just like a 1 minute just making general statement, but by the time you get to the real thing where you want for ask, time to run out. So we don't want for that to happen to you. We want people to forget the point across. But if you are unable to get your point across, we also does say, just be patient, hang up when the buzzer goes on, because there is a buzzer who will notify you or alert you for say your time is up. And when the buzzer goes up on the first time, you only have 15 seconds, which is almost no time. So please don't continue talking. And if you get more for say, we'll welcome that. Just call again. And then you can be on the queue. And that way they will go accommodate everybody. So we really hope we're going to cooperate and let we all work on this together. Now, let me go to the number. Say we are carried on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, WhatsApp. So we have some numbers too that people can always flashing at the screen for those who are watching us on, particularly on computer or iPad, and I presume maybe telephone. You will see the numbers are splashed on the screen periodically. We can do them at this time where the talk show. Then we will do them again as time goes on. And the control room will splash them from time to time, just for make people and see the number for call. But for some people that we may not get a good vision, or maybe not get the opportunity for see the numbers there on the screen, make I also explain, I call some of the numbers. The toll-free number is 866-944-5787. 7722. 866-944-7722. That's the toll-free number. The UK number now plus the sign plus or the plus sign 44 20 80 89 1455 plus 44 20 80 89 1455. That's for the UK. And for Australia, the plus sign 61 29 09 84 337. For Australia, plus 61 29 09 84 337. And last but not least, WhatsApp is 1 343 997 5828. 1 343 997 5828. So these are some of the contacts they want to be able for reach with. That said, today we topic now for just go with what is trending in the country, and for make people and see what in with respect to the new parliament or the sixth parliament. I think this is the sixth parliament. So we want to touch on certain issues, some of which the president talked about in his speech, but we also talk for do some review of the recent elections and the role of the elections management bodies. They will address logistics, citizens' participation in voting patterns and the PR system, and then review committee and other, well, so many other things. Let not belabor the point. So these are some of the topics that we'll go on for talk about. So that said, make I turn over to me co-host, Mr. Victor Mengot, who will introduce himself and probably take the lead. Victor, I turn it over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Mohammed, and thank you very much to our listeners. Them we hope say they listen to we and share this as wide as possible. And for making it easier for you now, the place where they call from in England sorry. Just in near to sorry. They don't mean to say we sorry because some man go pronounce and say sorry. So it's sorry from England, just outside Greater London.
How do you spell that? How do you spell it? How do you spell it?
It's Surrey.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Sorry. So I'm calling from Surrey, and we interact with you now. This is a very, very important thing we want to talk about. But for explain to people in the context, this now one of the things that, as I always say, okay, like for got the parallel between the British Parliament, which are privileged to serve, and some of the customs and traditions that we will get in Salon. Like in the British Parliament, where before Parliament to open, the Queen they give speech. Now the King will get King Charles will can give speech, and that speech there now the government they write time for him. We say this now waiting the government they do for the parliamentary year, because the parliamentary year, the sixth parliament, then they go every 1 year, then they get what's then called prorogation when a recess and come and continue. So for start the parliament for that year day, the agenda for that year day, you get the Queen's speech or the King's speech. Similarly in Sierra Leone, we get the presidential address when they mark the official opening of parliament. When one of the time where the president they go in the parliament, they say, well, this now what the government we don't do in the past, but for this year, this now what we can do. So now that this presidential speech come all about. But in all it tap day, it be say when he give that speech day, the members of parliament then will get time for debate. What he say he get for do. And that thing they will get for do, now that they get for debate, of course you will get the one that will go say, well, the president they do well. You go ask people that will go say go for do more. Or you get people left from the opposition who will say, well, this thing where the president say want do, we feel to say, actually, it will get teach them for bet. So now that's not the thing all about this presidential address, where the president don't tell you the agenda, and then after that, they will debate them for 2 or 3 days, then other things then will follow. Because it marks the start of the parliamentary year as opposed to the parliamentary term. Because the parliamentary term now 5 years, but the parliamentary year now every year. And we see say also we don't get the supplementary budgets, which sometimes we go rub much banana small if we get time. When are the budgets where they don't do for say the rest of 2023 until we get a full budget. So these are the issues that we want to talk about. But for start, one of the key things, although the president put on at the last part of his speech, now this idea of for review waiting happened this last election. And everything is centered on the role of the ECSL, the Electoral Commission of Sierra Leone. True to form, the president admits say there were teething problems with the management of the process and even logistics. But he equally say them problem they not change the outcome of the results. But then if you not change the outcome of the results and you don't make sure that there's a problem, why now the international observers themselves don't talk about the process and systems were not transparent? So waiting at the purpose of this new inquiry Randu headed by the vice president, where he say the vice president he able to do that because he will not do that kind of thing and then at the UN. So we'll start by that with my co-host, who will look at the legal procedural angle of this and what you will expect. So over to you, Brother Mohammed.
Thank you very much. Now, as Mr. Mengot just indicated, the president once set up committee, the president to some extent admits that there may, I don't know how to characterize them, whether not problem or irregularities, but somehow he see the need for set up a committee or talk about setting up a committee concerning irregularities, I would call it, at the election based upon soundings coming from the opposition, the main opposition. And apparently it take heed to it. But the interesting thing is, there's a pattern, there's a common pattern in Sierra Leone where we try to avoid. And I don't know whether this is deliberately done on the part of authorities or whether it's just not much thought is put into it. Because I see say a lot of the committees then within the set up. When the Auditor General was fired, the tribunal was appointed, and then when this government kind of power the previous term, not this new term, then set up commissions of inquiry, of which they were not willing to, because these were independent-minded people. It started off credibly, but the implementation of the recommendations were not as credible as they should have been, because I think certain people were just too difficult for go after. Now we hear the president to talk about setting up a committee for deal with this past election irregularities. And right from the get-go, I think he don't take the wrong step. He say Ingo puts the vice president in charge. He go put the vice president in charge. And the reason why he say because the vice president gets some expertise in election, either in election affairs, election laws, election practices, whatever that may be, but the vice president get expertise. As much as we not doubt the expertise that he may have on this particular subject matter, look at the totality of the circumstance and think of the appropriateness of the vice president heading a committee of investigating a government of which the vice president himself is a party. It belonged to the government. It belonged to the political party that has been accused of having rigged the election. And the president, is that an insult to the intelligence of people? Because the international community, they know better. So is that an insult to we intelligence? Why will you choose to put the vice president in charge when the vice president and the party and the government are the ones who are being accused of having perpetrated uh, improper conduct in the whole process? So to start with, if you want to give credence or credibility to a committee that the president is going to appoint, get independent people, people who are detached from the government, just like how the government in the beginning beget the commission of inquiry when they be set up. Get a judge from Nigeria, judge from Ghana, and then you get a Sierra Leonean judge who everybody knew was independent minded. So that's how you start, because you want to get some credibility to the process. Otherwise, it's a waste of money, it's a waste of time, it's not worth the effort. So any committee headed by the vice president, no matter how much expertise he has, even if he's a number one at the wall, it will not be credible, because he is part of the accused. He's one of the accused. He belongs to the group that is being accused of having done the inappropriate things. Them will lead to one party winning against the other. So I cannot imagine. Again, I repeat, either the president did not give much thought to it, the advisors did not give much thought to it, or the president might think the international community, as well as some of us, are just that dumb that will not go do some critical analysis of the appointment. And again, and this is a pattern, and I think government need to stop that, because even the August 10th inquiry where they make, where they put a certain lawyer, because I think as a lawyer, you forget, whenever they give you them position, and you professional integrity come on the line. But then put a certain lawyer for header. This I'm talking about the August 10th incident, protest or whatever it is called. And then the government, then the chairman of the committee come make recommendation and inject into the recommendation statement submitted by the government, which set the committee again. I mean, people can see through these things. So either a committee should not be set, just let bygones be bygones, just like what happened with the prison killings or the Tombo killings, no bother. But if you are going to set up something, let it be something credible. So I for one, and I'm sure people will agree with me, the vice president not get no business head in that thing, because the vice president is part of the team of the president. It belongs to the same political party of the president. It belongs to the same government of the president. So I don't think that thing they right from the get-go will be credible, And the international community, we need to get more regard and respect for the intelligence and the intellect, Sometimes we do these things for impress them. Now, talking
Yes,
about
but
that.
Mr. Shillong, before you go back, I just answer the trend what they talk on now. Yeah, coming from, I will say, okay, what is being planned, what in the terms of reference. If we remember, say, I want to pose this to you. If you remember, say, before the election, the Commonwealth was very dominant in this whole process. So remember the first time when the presidents and the happened for be in London at the same time with the opposition, the challenger, they were supposed to meet with Baroness Scotland, the Commonwealth Secretary General, for sign and undertaking. And then the team where the Commonwealth sent, they sent a team headed by Professor Osinbajo, who was former vice president of Nigeria. And when they talk about in team, they talk about within that team, they get experts on issues to do with elections management program and other things. Them. So, in your opinion, would it have been more welcoming for them to call the Commonwealth, since they get the experts and some of these Commonwealth people who were observers in the election process, to actually do the review? because it's a part of the review now, waiting the people and say they will send back. We don't get the full report there yet, now interim report. So what is your take on having, like, say, a body like the Commonwealth um, Secretariat providing this expert to do the review? And is this the
I,
right timing when the opposition they ask for certain things that we they not get yet?
I think that is the appropriate uh, direction for go. The Commonwealth Secretariat, if we get any objection, we objection get for day in the beginning, not in the end. When they call Samura Kamara and President Bio and tell them, which is just like anybody would watch boxing. Before the boxing starts, the uh, referee calls the two boxers face to face and tell them what you expect of them. No hitting below the belt. You stop as soon as they say stop. They give you all the basic rules. The Commonwealth Secretariat did that for we elections. Then called the president, then called Samura, because both of them happen to be in England at the same time. Then tell them what you expect, how to conduct a decent election. And it looks like both parties agreed to that. Now, if it turns out that things are not going, or there is some complaint by one party, and the only way we can resolve that doubt today is by having an independent committee such as that was headed by the Commonwealth Secretariat, or by an independently appointed, let's say, the international observers. Some we've had some people saying they are biased. I don't see any reason why they will be biased, but let's assume they are biased. Let's assume they are biased, and for that reason, we've taken the position that because I even hear somebody wait and say one of we top government officials refer to the American ambassador as an intellectual dwarf. Well, if you are an intellectual yourself,
No, no, it was correct. It was the leader of the EU
the
mission.
European, the
The term
European
he
Union,
used, he said, yeah, he said academic dwarf,
academic
right?
dwarf, which is just almost synonymous. But let's say that who is an African for the refer to a high level official of the EU or of the United States as an intellectual dwarf. These are some of the things we think too much of we self. Yet, if we are so good at what we do, how come we make so many mistakes? How come we're so dependent on these people that we think we know so much about? And how come we are not able to do much for ourselves at all? So this is just talk. And I think even protocol require that he should not have made such a statement. But going back to what you would say, my position is simply, if the president wants to let people attach any credence to whatever committee is going to appoint, he need not put the vice president, not as head, not as a member, and he need not put even any party members them into such committee. Get independent people. There are international observers, like you say, Professor Bajo, I don't know if I call his name correctly, and his group.
Osimbanjo. Yeah.
Yeah. So people like those who are highly acclaimed, they can look into matters like that and decide if, in fact, there is justification or there is legitimacy in the complaint of the other side. But I don't think this thing about just appointing committees left and right, committees that are you can predict the outcome because of the composition of the committee. You go always predict what the outcome will be. So this is just red herring. So I would suggest that the president doesn't do that at all. So back to you.
Yeah. Okay. Continuing on that basis, right? The other thing I want to throw in, there's this business of the electoral management body, where the key now the ECSL, the Electoral Commission for Sierra Leone. The other one, say them get a group where like an advisory group, which consisted of some of the elections observers them, both national, regional, and global. Which I will mean regional or continental. Regional, we get the ECOWAS, we get continental, the AU, and global, we get the Commonwealth. We had all these people together, and then some don't give an interim report, they don't give a full report. But from the interim report, they are talking about the transparency of systems and processes where they want the government for look into. In the absence of that, because one of the things that the other side they ask for, we are not here to judge the people and say that they ask for too much. Now the idea of say, okay, the process is, let explain the processes to the people and back. Forget about the numbers. And I think people that need for know these processes. The process is one, when the non-votes, we have about 11,836 polling stations. So each polling station forget a result, when they then have the result reconciliation form, where observers and party agents for sign. So even if you get placed the way party agents are not there must be an independent observer with a sign. So when they don't sign the RRFD, it now moves from the polling station to the district when they do all the verification. Then from the district, it go to the region where they do final tallying before it come now to the main center and the headquarters where they call the results. So the problem is, and the challenge is, let's say, okay, we must admit that for the ECSL for getting the result, they must have all the IRF forms, right? The IRF, they forget all the IRF. So what is being the difficulty for say, okay, let's look at each constituency, 11,836 polling station. Just give the figures, and then you can work from that figure to the main results. So if that is the case now, why not look at the processes, how this thing transpired? From one, just like I've been saying, like relay, the first lap at the polling station, second lap at the district, third lap at the regional headquarters, then last lap now at the main tallying center. So waiting now, then we'll look at the responsibility of all them people in there. So the process is important. And level of 18, issue of polling stations, some of them were not open, the late timing, and also the logistics problem is more now in the western region, when at the headquarters. So why would they come out and explain these things to us? So that's why I ask you now, if that will help.
If they will come out, it definitely will, because that's the demand that has been made by the other side, that they should come up with them disaggregated forms, then they and just can't try to put the appropriate forms in together for reflect which in the. For example, when I was listening to this broadcast on the other show by Mr. Kago, with that of the Honorable Mohammed Bangura, the lone APC member in Parliament for now. And this guy say the district will come out, or the constituency will come out. SLPP, this is just, and I hope people then will take this kindly, but just show the case where they try for me, that in your district, SLPP had 9,000 votes, without a doubt. But ECSL reported the votes that particular district day or polling district day as 19,000 votes. Then say they've asked ECSL, also when I get the extra 10,000, they have not given any explanation. But that complaint was presented by his group, Mr. Bangura, Honorable Bangura, to the APC. Now, he refused, and I think appropriately so. He said he can only speak for his own area because he was asked. So were there irregularities or misinformation on the other side? He said, well, I can't speak to that. But make me on concrete evidence. For CSLPP only had 9,000, but the ECSL reported the outcome at that particular area as 19,000. And they've asked APC to post that to ECSL. Well, again, this goes back because there was a back and forth thing. It was a very interesting discussion because in the Guinea justification, why he refused for go now, for why he refused for go by the dictate of the party and decide for going to parliament. But he say in present in own evidence of fraud or irregularities or erroneous reporting by the ECSL to the APC body at large. And this is what concerns me too. If APC had this overwhelming evidence, which I think they did, I don't know why they think say they get a case to make, because by just not presenting none of them in a court, when they had overwhelming evidence, no matter how much you distrust the court at some point will have their own pride, they will have their own shame. If the evidence is so overwhelming, if they want to make a ridicule of themselves, they are free to do so. But when I help the court now by not presenting all the evidence that they will want to get, what when I say when I get, and even them formula what when they say the ECSL for produce. My position will be, if I had any advice for the APC, it doesn't matter that there is no specific law saying ECSL has to do that. Fundamental fairness requires that. So go to court. Look at other portions in the Constitution and argue that for say it violates fundamental fairness, it violates public policy. For compel the motion, the appropriate action should be in this country where I practice, it will be a motion to compel ECSL. If the court decides, say, oh, ECSL not going to do that, if they want to give such a narrow interpretation and make a mockery of the system, not try to put some teeth into the Constitution, let it be. But when I cannot give the Supreme Court that free passes here, when they give the free passes, but say we will not trust them. Well, we know the system is terrible. But now we're all problems. So now we all look at the system and begin to come up with ways, for build the system. But we cannot build the system by not going to court, by not raising constitutional issues. I think the constitution is such that you can always find something in the constitution for hang you cap on. So my position simply is that, well, as I've said over and over, and I respect, because we get some heavy hitters, intellectuals, them who felt maybe it was appropriate not to go to court, but I think they put themselves at a tremendous disadvantage, because at the end of the day, what kind of democracy are we going to have if we eliminate the court system? If we say we don't respect the court, so we can't go with the court. I think the right to criticize the court should always be there, as APC to do. But that doesn't mean you have to avoid them. I think all matters. And I think it's not too late still. They can go to court unless there's a statute of limitation or there is some time limitation. If there's a time limitation, maybe still a creative lawyer can go to court and argue reasonableness or unreasonableness of whatever that statute is. But I think they should find a way to go back to court for compel ECSL, because ECSL, they make this narrow, very narrow, very, very narrow interpretation that there is no law that says they must do this, they must do that. It's almost like somebody saying, when they say, before you cross the street, look left, look right for traffic. You say, I don't need to do that because no law not say I for do that. But common sense dictates that you for do that for avoid an accident. But not to always a driver will maintain a careful lookout for you. So ECSL, the argument is meritless in my view, and but if they are not forced, they are not going to do anything. And who's going to force them? Parliament is not an enforcer of the laws, and the judiciary get the power, and the judiciary all by itself cannot do anything without the cooperation of the police. But the enforcer and the judiciary, So whenever there is some violation, so this is the problem now. I wonder what APC is going to be after 6 months. What are they going to do? And I also think the APC, the public relation campaign, has not been as effective as it should have been, because they should have been much more effective than they've been. And again, let me take this opportunity for say there was a there was a piece of paper, I try to think of the appropriate word, that the judiciary had put out on APC, that APC was maligning the judiciary, and that and then put out this chart, that will show how many cases were decided by which judges and the outcome. I'm yet to see any response to that. And please, if there is any response, please send it to us at VOS, because we need to get that information there. We did see the judiciary publish that, but we not see any response in terms of me and my producer will look at the chart. There was some mathematical error, but I don't think that is of any substance. But we need to talk about the fact with respect to the number of cases that were decided by what judges, who was declared victorious. So we need some response from the APC for see how credible the complaint is, and how credible that of the judiciary, because it was so unusual that the judiciary itself put out that chart there by illustrating all the things I just mentioned. So my point is, if the president, again, like I said earlier, he should forget this idea about putting a local committee there of like-minded people who are pro-government. I think he should find independent-minded people, or else he need not waste the country's money by putting the vice president, who is also part of the group that is being accused of impropriety, as head. It's like giving it's like giving a rat or a mouse cheese for safekeeping and expect enough for each other. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. I don't see the appointment of the vice president in expertise. This is one instance in which the expertise doesn't count at all. Back to you, sir.
Okay, so just to round up this segment, because I think say we try more for going to the president in Big Five agenda. We would like for remind our listeners say this is not all done, because in reviewing all this idea of the government spreading an olive branch to the opposition, the need for peace and cohesion, and this inquiry, let's not forget that there are other issues, which are three more issues which bear on the election. And we will watch their issues and they closely and come back to you. Some time ago, we had the eminent lawyer, Charles Magai, on this show, where inside Binongo court prior to the election, because he raised some objections. That case is still going on. We also get the case of Madam Olufemi Claudio taking the PPRC to court, because PPRC is one of the political parties representation regulation council, because our smaller party was disbarred for certain things that they say she didn't meet. And then finally, another lawyer recently exercised the right under the right to access information, Lawyer Mara, for ECSL to produce these figures. So as we get all these things together, we go come back to this whole idea of how do we manage this process of elections disputes. And we've insisted the judge, the Minonde, wait for listening to petition. Coincidentally, we never ever get any other petition to date in the court. And I think the reason why now, because this time we then vote on a block district block system, and the opposition, they not come out yet with a position on that. They are focusing more on the presidential election. So we will update our listeners. And again, I'll remind the listeners and say, we in VS will not hold any view or support any party. We just state the obvious. So now, for continuing this program, let's look at this tradition of the president giving his speech on the opening of parliament, we talk about the big five agenda. If we remember the last time, the president carried this free quality education, where he spent, we will spend 22% of annual budget on free quality education, mostly focusing on primary and secondary education. But now, some of the other things that we come out with also get a bearing on the manifesto where been say he may not achieve more than he been promised. That is his view. But let's look at this big five agenda. And the way we want to look at the big five agenda, for make them plain to people then, we will look about say, okay, what thing they intend for do, and we will base that on what thing the president will not do this past 5 years, and what thing previously will not do. We can go as far back as the nation Sierra Leone will know some of the things. Because the first one we they talk about, now Operation Feed the Nation. Feed the Nation. When we say feed the nation, we get to look at Sierra Leone, we get to look at even the patterns, waiting at the demand, those food we demand for. But when you talk about agriculture, we know say rice production is very, very important. Because Sierra Leone are one of the African countries them where they talk about staple food. We have one main staple food, which is rice. Even though we get variety of things that they do rice with, they get the plazas there, definitely. But rice production is very paramount in our place. And remember when we grow up, we get two types of rice we produce. We get what we call the upland rice and then the swamp rice. And in way days, we know say Sierra Leone be a net exporter of rice. This time, we're a net importer of rice. And for put it in perspective, there's a demand of 250 million every year for rice production, where they import rice. The government may not come, they call this Thomas Boom project, we see what happen. Then bring a lot of tractors for agriculture, and one of the things that they may say and do, then bring them tractors, they left them to the private sector. So if you're a farmer now, you can come rent their tractor and they plow your land. Then you get to talk about seed production, the distribution of seed. So apart from rice, the other figure that we'll get, recently, we get what's in there the trend in Mia when yabas, onions. Onions what we call yabas locally. And they give a breakdown. We spend $35 million every year importing yabas. Right? Rice import is $250 million. Yabas is $35 million. Even chicken and eggs, frozen chicken, with the import 10 and day. So how do we go about this Operation Feed the Nation? Because when you talk about feeding the nation, it's not just the production. When we do basic economics, when you talk about the theory of production, you talk about 4 different areas: land, labor, capital. Capital means the finance, and entrepreneurship, the knowledge, the know-how, the master sabi people. So these are the things that has to be in place before we go the other side. So I want to let you give with this introduction, why I don't give some of the challenges them in achieving this feed your nation. Because not the first thing, under the APC, remember, a former vice president, S.I. Kuruma, been getting a Mafoki project, which have been visited sometime, the Mafoki self-help projects. It's similar to what I also witnessed in Israel with the Sharaf and the kibbutz system, when a communal farming, and the Masav when are also communal farming. Even President Momo been get green revolution. So with all the revolution and all here, they will run out Operation Feed the Nation. Waiting are the challenges based on what will be done land. For me, from a transportation background, transport is very important. We know the importance of the railway and the demise of the railway, the closure of the railway. We have to talk about access to markets. We have to talk about water supply, irrigation, agriculture, storage, logistics. So what more from that for we, Brother Shilon, in terms
Okay,
of
sir.
if we really
Well,
serious about feed the nation, the challenges
if,
the
if
whole thing so we will get.
I would have appreciated when the president talked about then lofty goals there, lofty but necessary goals, because these are goals that are within we ability for achieve, and these are goals we will be in the right trajectory. The problem is the policy for achieve them goals here now usually is lacking. For example, like you say, you mentioned so many things. You mentioned land, you mentioned labor, you mentioned marketing, you mentioned financing, you mentioned irrigation, you mentioned transportation. And these are all necessary components to get a successful, for reaching a successful achievement and then a successful outcome. But if we go in terms of land, we'll get plenty. That of itself is not an issue. But the land, as we know, are not well regulated in the sense that, for example, we know say most of the land there will only be available up country, but there is availability of land. Now, some of the land there are owned by individuals, and the policy up country for get land is a little bit different from the western area. By now, it seems to me, with all the lawyering will take place in the country, with all the intellectuals that we will get, with all the so-called policymakers, them, we forget. It seems to me, by now, up country for that get a system in place whereby registration of land ownership, transferring of title, all of that they should be in place, consistent with the customary law, where we not just want to get rid of, but for do them in a way that the transformation will be fair to those who actually, because there are people who plantation land, and sometimes certain plantation land, if they are not producing, can be bought and converted into um, income producing crops. But so policies have to be in place. So this in Australia and the country where we get two, three ministers for one ministry, where we get all kind of high sounding people and with education. But when it comes to implementing policy, that's where the problem comes. Labor, we all know say labor is cheap. For right now, we are fortunate that labor not the least of the cost of anything we do, even when you build us. I give an example. If you're building a 3,000 square foot house in Sierra Leone, it will cost you three times as much as it will cost the same kind of house for building a Ghana, for building a Kenya, because of the high cost of building materials in Sierra Leone. So Sierra Leone is without a doubt one of the most expensive countries in the world. All this the stymied progress. So now, when we talk about labor, labor is there. It's plenty, not the cheapest than and people are looking for jobs. People are looking for employment. People are run for going on the street. They hustle all day for big, or for thief, or for do some kind of things. Then we for go all around. They sell 2-3 bangles all day long. I mean, we can employ people and put them to work and give them a decent day's living. Now, the other thing is marketing. Okay, if we are going to produce rice for feed the nation, first of all, anything we want to produce, we should look beyond our borders, in the sense that we will produce enough, but we will also be thinking about exporting of goods, so we can have an exchange either in terms of money or in terms of getting product from other parts of the country. But we're not to do that. No focus is being done on that. Financing. Okay, if it's going to be a private enterprise, because government itself is not going to be able for just produce rice. You get for create incentive, you get for create opportunities, you get for create the desire. Now the banking system is structured in such a way The indigenous Sierra Leonean doesn't get a loan. And we have not put our banking expert into operation for see how, when we say one self-sufficient, if not to the government get for doing, the Sierra Leoneans, they might get the expertise, not get the money. What program does the government have in place to for back some of them loan them where the government will give? If somebody go in a bank for go get a loan, that some country like here will get what you call SBA loans, government guarantee loans. So you can go to any bank. If you qualify, you meet the criteria for loan, then go give you backed by the SBA, subject to the interest rate that the government wants. Because if you lend somebody the money, you gain 30% interest, it's not going to be able to pay. So these are policies that government get for put in place. So when would they talk about this thing? So all the love to things there what the president talk about. And Mr. Mengo mentioned another thing, transportation. We need, there is no way we economy go reach maximum potential if we not get railroad. We need a railroad. We once had it. Now greed and selfishness on the part of Pashaki, and short-sightedness now lead to that. Instead of we improve the railroad we get, we eradicate the railroad. Nowhere, any country where we get railroad, some country then they didn't get the railroad still like Congo. All rusty engines them, but they're still running them. We decide for just get rid of, we will not replace them with anything. It takes years from the time where they get rid of the railroad till now. We are still building roads. We not put roads for replace them immediately. So we need for think in terms of bringing back the railroad from east to west, or from west to east, as it used to be, and from north to south. If we really want to build the economy, otherwise this would just be grand sounding talks, but nothing doing. Because when we want to appoint people and we want to come up with good policy, we want to appoint people and the government, and not only this government, even the previous government, they always want to appoint somebody then where they know, somebody where they want for help, put in a committee so he could join, he could draw some kind of stipend, not to what they can contribute to the whole thing, because it's a matter of common sense. If we are so good, if we are doing anything right, how come the outcome is never that obvious as good outcome? So we need to start doing certain things where we need for make sure say we for do for help the people, because right now it's just talk. It's just all this big talk. We want to see what in them big sounding degrees you can do, and these are practical, achievable things that what we can do. Not to say they're beyond we capacity. Now the spirit will not get for be committed to what you will need for do. Otherwise, we can do great things, So, Mr. Mangum, okay, we'll talk about irrigation. Irrigation is another thing. Here is Sierra Leone, I think in West Africa, now we get the highest rainfall in the region. We do not know how to conserve water. We're not getting a strategic reserve. People are still struggling for water in that country. We get several rivers, the Great Scarces, Little Scarces, River Roquel, Sewa, you go on and on and on. We not get none, we not make use of any of them major rivers there, and we get water in abundance. But we are, Bob Marley gets a song. He say, in the midst of water, the fool is thirsty. So we get the highest rainfall, but still water not a problem in Sierra Leone. And we see how the water the waste. So in fact, having said that, I think we get to involve more geologists and use their expertise In fact, I have one in mind. I will try for talk to my co-host Mike we invite who might have some ideas. People like those are the ones we need for putting then kind of if we talk about irrigation on a national basis for come up with ideas, not if we go put some lawyer, we're not getting no idea. Not if we go put some doctor, not to appropriate positions down there. So like a geologist, we have to use with geologists them. We get a lot of geologists who work in the mining industries, some of whom are teaching in universities, but their talents are not being put in place. So forget this rice farming for operation self-sufficient and stuff. It will take President Bio the rest of the 5 year that he's been elected to. Let not think say this is something. I see former minister of, I think Safa, I think that JJ Safa, I see and they talk before the election say this time if SFPP get a chance, they can accomplish everything they've been promising the people in 3 months. That is an insult. He knows better. He knows that cannot be done. So you see, then simplistic. In fact, I don't even think say he believe what he say. He just no. But this, I call that insulting the intelligence of the population. So people like that one and they therefore be careful what they say. They are better off being quiet. 3 months, government policy take more than 3 months just for implement, let alone for achieve what the policy is all about. So these are some of the things. If the government is serious, every little steps. And let me remind people them again. This is not my view, and you are welcome to send in differing view or be invited to the show. But let's remember, everything where the white man left with before independence, we have not improved any. They left with good educational structure. Our education is worse today. They left with good civil service. The civil service in Moi is inefficient than ever before. They left with good economic system. We will get SAPMB. We will get forest industry. You can name them. Where are all these things today? And the sad part about some of them things like we talk about, it's quite possible that maybe 70% of the people in government today who are ministers may never even have seen the train or ridden the train than I want. Some of them are not even aware of the PZs, the USCs, the GBOs, the SUAs, the Kingsway. I'm talking about people who are running policy today. So they just not get any idea what we've missed. What have we done for replace the SFPMB that was so productive, that had cash reserve, but politics consume all the money the SFPMB had. Some of these people who are ministers today, they are much too young for know much about the cacao show, the agricultural show. Some of them are much too young to know about forest industry, how productive the forest industry was. So this is the problem we're having today because we know the one way to run the show cannot relate to the recent history, economic history of Sierra Leone. But when I show me one thing, what we inherit, what would I improve?
Just to interrupt, I think we have our first caller on the line.
Yeah, let me take that call. Hello, caller. What's your name? Well, let me say, hello, caller.
Good evening, Mr. Sharon again, and Mr. Mengot.
Some people are opposed to giving their names. Let me just say, where are you calling from? Yes, sir.
Hello. Yes,
hello,
this is Fode Mustafa from Leicester.
Oh, Mr. Fode, thanks again for calling.
Yes, sir. Well, I just want to give a small take on this speech. But first, I could just want to talk about what Mr. Cabo been saying, because him been taking a swipe at all the president them, but he single out one person where he say Milton Magai. I want to tell Mr. Cabo say Sierra Leone start for go being right from that point because Milton Magai didn't give the best administered or good administered Sierra Leone in hand. We not get any clue as to how to handle that, for take from Usai and Giam, let's move on forward. We begin to go right down from that time because everybody talk about him because it just like a non-bill was fine one. They don't paint them. All they nail them, they shine, they handle them. All I mean, but that whole thing, they all the window they don't broke. The tiles they don't all the domo they not for done. That is how it is. Now, because if I remember, they say during the independence, there was a movement where they try to talk about in the I mean, let them not give you independence or something like that. Because we had more than 90% illiteracy, then the Creole people and talk say, I they can't give independence to a nation that is illiterate, so everything's going to crumble. But the upliners, them in the SLPP or something like that, they want just power. They don't know what they are going to do with the power. So now they can't give Milty Magai. Milty Magai wouldn't give him these fine hosts. Now instead begin the broken out some things them, I mean stairs, all that things they begin the broke them. So I just want maybe Mr. Kagu make it note this point. And Nain received the brand new host. Nain begin for Pelham. Okay. I just want to talk small about the feed salon issue. You know, we get all them 30 or 40 ministries there in a salon, but the bottom line is they not get money. Salon budget, because it been there before 880 to 900 million dollars before the promising of the Leone. So now it go down there around 400 to 500 thousand dollars, $500 million. Then the budget too. So if we say they don't pay the salaries, them we na 70%, debt service in 22%. Now how much left? Now 80%. How much left? Let us check them. Let us say 60 plus 22. It don't go 82% to 18% now left for making deliver services. So all of these lofty things that when they talk about, it's just a farce. It's something like a dream that will never be actualized because the money not there. Salon go only make a step forward if even we make a sacrifice. We put away these ministries or we slash 1/3. If we get every year 100 million or $200 million to invest on something that if not 5 years, then we don't invest, let me say 1 billion. That 1 billion they begin give you revenue. It's either on raw materials or anything where we can answer like raw material which we get natural resources. But if as long as things remain as they are, all of these are just a dream. Nothing is going to change. These fees alone, 10% of the budget, 10% of that 18% of the money, now much every year. Now much. Because most of that money now for salary, where they talk say 22%, most of them are salary, the money they go. Not to say now for just while I run up on this, the free education what we talk about. Now towards the tail end of their last administration, now they give them $600,000 for letting them buy shoes and books there for picking them, where they don't promise. The school feeding, now people in the door and for week. Eh? Who side would anyway? I go for copper later. I go get for round of the point later. Yes. No problem.
All right. Let me check out what side you left off. This is not the problem. Now you point out. Okay.
There's
Before I
another
go
call on the
further,
line.
let me just
Don't
take,
take the
let me
other
just.
caller before you go further.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hello, caller. Where are you calling from? Hello, caller. Or maybe we lost the caller. Maybe we'll call again.
Okay.
But these are some of the things because we are not consciously, sincerely committed to running country. Oh, the caller is back. All right, caller, where are you calling from?
Hello.
Hello, caller.
Yes, good evening,
Caller.
Mr. Sheila.
Yes, sir. Good evening.
Yes, thank you very much. Good evening, Mr. Mengot. Anyway, I can always like for listening to my program. It makes sense, May God bless you now because what you do, a good. I wish a lot of people that were able to listen, and most of them are in their offices here, so they will follow. With the follow up, we see the president. We don't outline the policy, then feed salon, operation back into the land, food self-sufficiency. What we go back will reflect to the past 5 years. When you get for build foundation, you get for starts from the time where this man can have power, what did he talk about? Look at the bakery where he talk about feeding the people, materialize. They talk about all of them tamabung rice and stuff, the farm up to today. We don't know the ministers when they get the tractors and how that goes, all of when you talk of agriculture, you want to feed the people in our salon. If I don't say majority of the Salonians then were involved in farming, they no go better school. Some na half school and go. And farming predominantly in the rural areas. We get good land there, just like what Mr. Mengot mentioned. It's like from where he gets that farm day, that Mafoki area there, until he died. All them Bangaden, they now find all old second, all replace them. Then there's so many body lands even within that okay river there. If you go there, you see the skeletons maybe 30, 40 years back, they machine there. So nobody no can even think of how for improve their land and they for make them able empower the farmers. How Salon go feed itself? The majority of the people the way they involved in farming, or they form them, maybe they get organization at the villages, they don't get collateral, they don't get money, they don't get structure, they don't get improved varieties, seeds. The people that way they go study even the agriculture, we come on at the Jalan at the university, we get some knowledge, then they will empower them so that they go able direct the knowledge, they know how to the farm, so that they go marshal out the common people, the community, the upland people, and for me they able produce food. Salon gets a vast land and a very rich land, but just like what you mentioned, transport system, most of the goods they produce at Salon now perishable goods here. These are annual crops. They grow within a year. Now some of them crops are heavy rice. They grow within the year 3 times because they get improved varieties now. They don't make most of them still say today, not like the older days again. But how the farmer will produce, where you not even get much to call they go take in load na the village day. You go for total from the remote area, take kind of the highway. Imagine the wastage na the farm force. How we don't waste the rice, we don't waste the cassava, the roti, the pesete, the roti. Government get for look at them people and they help them form a community so that they go get social groups them. When I get private people the way they fund them so that when I go buy from them. If government buy from them, they which means they know they lost and they sell because government they sell back, make them cold storage them. But who side then get them still and they all for store, who side then get their seeds and the rules and all day. So now the problem is, so me I not say this particular government with all them bloated, economic them minister they open more money. Who said they get the money? Agriculture involves money. We want make commercial farming, not so now for subsistence farming. People they do, then just farm them feed themselves. But if they want to improve that kind of farming system, for involve the people them, the people that we know, we get idea about agriculture. But all of them, they talk to them about agriculture. They give them tractors, they can't go to the village. The tractors for make the private farmer self one go. We get people who come out of the diaspora say one go open farm them. We get the we get the then we assist them. They're not able to help them at all. So then they just look at who that day na party. Now this is not the problem. If you want to invest, because you don't belong, you don't get any connection. Why will all they work with this connectivity? This is the work with this the people them. Cut across the past government then. This or the other one they will. But this time is the worst. We don't see. So full self-sufficiency, I'm not saying it's feasible as alone. No. Because look at even the educational system today. Before they able to develop the young one, for me they go into the farm, they will not get the strategy. So I not feel say with this present government, anything like that will able to materialize. Thank you very much. Maybe I will continue listening to the program and I will make a contribution once again.
Yeah, I'm not trying to keep Mr. Mengot out, but I make a quick comment. For further what you just say, this is not the thing. Now here is a system. Me a lawyer, but look at the trajectory in Sierra Leone. Everybody is trying to be a lawyer. It may be because it's the easiest respectable profession for getting to. I don't know. In Sierra Leone. Now, we are not leaning towards trying for train people then open more trade schools. And well, I, for one, I don't see the need for additional universities. It reminds me of a story I once heard of a U.S. Senator Naya. He tells the story about where This man and the wife then sit down on the porch. One moonshine, then they at the rocking chair. So in wife na Ada. And he say, Ada, he say, I love you so much. He say, I wish I could get 5 hands for the touch you and play with you and everything. Now Ada say, get out of here. He said the 2 hand where you get, you can't do much with them. You want 5, what you go do with them? So now the same thing now they apply to we. Waiting we inherit, waiting we get. We do talk all and lofty stuff, innovation, this, that, everything. And there is also another book in this country, we titled Everything I Need to Know in Life I Learned in Kindergarten. We problem now basics, just basics. You know, if we can just stick with basics, we will do well. But we're not even able to maintain, let alone sustain, waiting the waiting left give. We are struggling. I grew up, I need for to remind people that maybe a lot of them were brothers they are waiting a power today. They might be upline boys, but I don't think they get any experience past me. I grew up in the heart of Upper Bambara Chiefdom, Kalaun district. My daddy na be trader. Would buy coffee, cocoa, banga, you know, that na be what we be do mostly. I grew up in that circumstance there. So I would, in those days, in the 60s, the farmers then get cooperative. I don't know whether that exists today. Farmers get cooperative since we be seasonal goods them or products then they produce like coffee, na seasonal, cacao, na seasonal. What can happen during the strong years? I mean the season when the season go down money no day, they can go borrow money from the cooperative. When like what you would call at this country credit union or some cooperative bank. It existed then that farmers were being helped. That's how farmers were able for pay for the school fees. Them for a lot of these guys now with all these PhDs, what would the year but we're not able to do anything in return for the country. I am fully aware of the background of some of them were brothers here from up country. I know how tough life was. But then parents get a dream because these were very smart, illiterate people. They knew if they educate them people, life would not be as hard for them picking as it had been for them. Disappointingly, these guys now who have all these degrees, who have the power, who are into politics, they are not raising the standard of living of the people. You know, they are not. I grew up upline, so I know what I'm talking about. Kalaun district, Bo district, I spent my entire teenage life, you know, adolescent, and then 2 districts in there. So I'm not a stranger to some of them things they were to talk about. But God, that's what government is there for implement policy will uplift the standard of the people. We are not seeing that. So when we come, some of we will hear all the lofty goals here, innovation, you know, and we're going to get into this thing about what's the thing, not a teenage, youth unemployment and all this stuff. We would love to see all the APC government talked about youth unemployment. The SFPP government don't talk about youth unemployment for 5 years, then get another 5 years. Nothing doing. And the other thing, I am a pessimist. With what we don't learn from Sierra Leone since independence, because I was conscious, I participated in Bo coronation field where we got independence in 1961. I was old enough, so I know what I'm talking about. So with all this, what would they do? All the government will come and go. Youth unemployment is getting worse. So we're going to get to that in this discussion about youth unemployment. But so we just need for talk on what in Englishman call platitude. Let us get to serious business. Let us start for do. But we are not going to achieve that if we are going to triple ministries. Ministry of Youth, Ministry of Sport, Ministry of Gender Affairs. These are ridiculous ministries. They all can be combined. But we want to satisfy all with political cronies them. So we keep expanding. And for every ministry you open, there is a bureaucracy. You need a permanent secretary, assistant permanent secretaries, you need staff. So this is where all the money is being wasted. You know, Minister of Higher Education, Minister of Lower Education, small Sierra Leone, we need 2 ministers of education, you know. So this, we're just getting worse. So who are coming up with these policies? I don't know whether it's the president's idea or whether it is uh, bad advice, but all these things are not cheap. They are competing with all the other things that the country need. Now, how can we, in this day and age, be talking about we're not talking about shortage of yabas, it's almost the absence of yabas. How? We can plant that, we can produce that. We'll get an agriculture university that has been in existence for almost 60 years. So the question is we have to ask ourselves, what's wrong with us? What's our problem? I pass it over to you, Mr. Mengot. Oh, there comes a call. There, let me take a call. Hello, hello. I think you muted, but where are you calling from, caller?
Yeah, good afternoon, Mr. Shilom. Abdullah from Maryland.
Yes, sir. Come. You're not loud enough. Can you just turn up the volume or
Yeah,
something?
yeah, Abdullah from Maryland.
Oh, yeah, Abdul, welcome. Thanks for calling.
Yeah, I just want to make new submission on this agriculture, the president's flagship program. I think in will be the third head of state, if I not forget, where they come up with agriculture feeding Sierra Leone as a flagship. But most started with the Green Revolution in 1985. Tijan Kabal said Duam 2002, or say by 2007, maybe nobody will go a bit angry. Then can do it. One thing if you feel for realize that you get other competing priorities. Education, we don't talk about health, energy, water resources. They are also competing priorities, and these are all giant and multi-billion projects that we if we're able to accomplish. But me suggestion when we go be one transportation at Mr. Mengo's said. And one big impediment to achieve food security for Sierra Leone. The feeder road thing, they're so bad that you get people away. I go between Posoko Binti area some time ago. I see the cassava where people them put they don't have it. They didn't the road, the main road. They cassava they same weeks, you don't get trucks away for Green and Kamna put local or Green and Kamna Makini. Them cassava they did all working. So when government think they talk about feeding Sierra Leone, now actually and tax that. I don't go and say I go skeptical, but I don't go be pessimist no more. But transportation and storage facilities, these are the key aspects we will need. Few weeks ago, I heard South Korea say then they help some African countries. I think about 5 of them are West Africa, Guinea-Bissau, Senegal, Gambia, where then they help with new variety of rice. Help them with rice. I think Kenya, Uganda, and Cameroon or same state. The problem we will get in Sierra Leone for plant rice, these are the old one bush and go give you 1 bushel and up. So the variety the way we plant, it's not outdated. When you go to the Asian countries and Pakistan, South Korea, or China, 1 bushel will give you something like that 8 or 10 bushel where you have it. So if we variety, we improve on the variety, I think then they go able for help. And let me not just concentrate on one just crop. When you say feeding for feed Sierra Leone, you get for involved in very look now Koinadugu then they produce their back. The one Koinadugu they produce their back. The one na Lunge, of course, it don't die down because of encouragement. Because you get for big varieties. And if the president don't link and say the feeding the feed Sierra Leone it go link with the school feeding, it's not laudable something. but provided they're able to support them cooperatives, and we need plenty cooperatives. We need plenty cooperatives and Boku farming implements and new varieties of food, both for cash crop and the non-cash crop food them. We need them for both. And we need agro-based industries. Because if we they produce some of the crops them, like them economic 3.0, they produce orange, they produce the orange, they produce banana and other things. If we get industries them, when the people and they don't harvest something and they're able to go sell them, so now their industries and their industries and they self go able to process them or they can at the market, it go fine. Because the more person don't know say I get a ready factory where they buy me goods, it they produce more. So I think government will also think in that direction there. Because agriculture na chain work. If somebody know say it a profit, waiting it a produce, it will produce more. If now 1 acre farm you put, you know say when you get ready market for them, you go produce you go the next time 3 or 4 acres you go even for plow. So I think government will think in that direction. I not go one be pessimistic, but it is an Herculean task. And the political will for this for let all hands come on deck for able to achieve this. Now this is what I get for so thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your call almost every week and your contribution. Yeah, Mr. Mangum. Mr. Mangot,
Yeah.
we've kept you quiet for a while, so please take over.
Well, I must thank the last caller very well because he even answered a question where one of the regular contributors can put to we. I think that Mr. Arthur Tayu, he said we are very good at analyzing the problems, but we don't provide solutions. Yeah, let me read them back. I keep reminding you two hosts that you aggressively diagnose the problems of Sierra Leone. However, what you need to do is to suggest what can be done, and it's necessary that you come into the fray and remedy the nation. You can't make an omelette without breaking eggs. Fine. The last caller actually we addressed this issue. And I'll go back for answer Mr. Tayu directly. We talk about some of we even basic O-level economics. We talk about the factors of production, which we mentioned here, which is land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. I'm sure my lead host here talk about land, the issue of our land tenure system, where even the land, most of the lands are in where we call the colony and protect the regions, because I use the right word. When I talk about the regions, we talk about all the areas after Songo in the western region. We don't get a land commission. The government don't get a land commission. But most of the land that they we get for do agriculture are mostly communal land or land where it be say now private land. And then land and you cannot use most of this land for collateral to go with banking system. So that's not the problem. So we therefore look at how we manage land. Because without land, you cannot do agriculture. We talk about labor. Labor now, you get a massive migration from the regions to Freetown. So people they're not there again for plants. How do you encourage people to go back? We get a youthful generation. You therefore encourage people to go back. And if they go back, you look at the amenities that are there, the schools, the health facilities, access to clean water, access to electrification and energy. These are things which so you cannot do food security and in isolation. Don't talk about institutional setup. I mean, my colleague here may talk about farmers cooperative. In fact, recently we see where the farmers they go tell President Bio thank you. But that time when they go tell President Bio thank you and congratulate them, then self when the farmers not go into agenda. Waiting they want. We will get farmers cooperatives are this person, it would be nice if the comments are based on solution to a problem rather than partisan. Yes, we know they go partisan. We talk about, now makes we talk about successive governments. We talk about Momo's Green Revolution. We talk about Tijan Kabazwan. We talk about the
Obviously,
President Bewan.
that person is not listening. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah. So we are here to make suggestions. When you talk about things like entrepreneurship, know-how, that is what my colleagues come in. Jala University was one of the universities that was designed specifically for boost to agriculture. But Jala is becoming more academic than Frobe College now. Instead of the enhanced things to do with horticulture, agriculture, research, I believe say even one of the ministers, Professor Jones, was attached to Jala when they do that rice, that special rice breed where they do. So we get institutions them, but we not actually empower the institutions, and that is what we want to see this government. Not only Jala, there's a young man I know within our Sierra Leone Institute of Engineers forum. We don't do a lot of machines there. Get machines there for Dok Kasada. We know about Bogari. Feed the nation again, not just what we plant, but also how you tell people about nutrition. But when we talk about feed the nation, not just talk about adults only. If you now remember, the time in there we get some produce. What will they use for feed baby them? So feed the nation start from the cradle to the grave. So issues to do with infant feeding, right? Recently they just celebrate breastfeeding week. But other things and they like millet and other things we could use for feed baby, then baby products, them, baby food. We still import them. For God's sake, when you talk about agriculture feed the nation, you talk about what do they eat, the variety, right? Cassava is there, we get cocoyam, we get rice, but how you change people's mindset? The Ministry of Health gets a nutrition department. Public education to say, well, we just like what the Bible say, man cannot live by bread alone. We cannot just live by rice alone. For me now, you'll be surprised that at this time of my life, perhaps for a whole week, I eat rice once in a while, and at England, I'm able to buy cassava, I'm able to buy yam, I'm able to buy gari, I'm able to buy semolina, I'm able to buy pounded yam. So the variety is there. So this fixation about rice, you talk about bread now, right? How many people they eat bread? That bread business and drink tea are mostly in the western area. In the provinces, people can also get much for eat bread. Then get other variety. So when we look at agriculture, just as my colleagues say, you look at feed the nation. So I think that is the answer to the question. So this is a good time to go to the next thing now. We're at the big five, but before I go there, I'll get a caller on the line. So let's stop here and get the caller.
Hello, caller. Who's that you call from?
Hello, Mr. Shilon. This is Mohammed. I call from the UK.
Okay, sir. Welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, too. You know, I can like your program. I can really like why they see one through. It's one we did it. I always appreciate you now.
Thank you. Thank you.
Our main issue here is for feeding the nation. We need first a government stability. All the government stable. Everything stable in the country. Things they go faster. But if there is no government stability, we dip our arguments, we dip on this, we dip on that, there is always a problem. We not ever able to feed that nation there. Stability of a government, of a country, they make things they go very fast and good. But if we dip on this fetch, how will we feed the nation first? This is not a problem. Then the other thing where I see other countries they do, where they make people that they able to produce anything when they produce at the country, they import again. Like Abbas. What you make with people except for plant the yabas. Do all they come, Iboku pass, do all they produce. Do all they produce, that's why they take the rotting. They tell an answer, they say now, you know, kind self. Not to English yabas, then you call our other name. So if they create more import things the way they produce in the country, definitely that's the way they produce in the country. People are not value again. Look like a race. Look at the higher how many container, how many tons of rice. How person they produce rice again? If we stop for produce for import rice, in 1 or 2 years we'll stop or we this have done. If we show rice they come on a salon. But because we dey go through the import, it pass mark. So nobody no get pepper chef on a pepper with the imports are now. Onions, if they come on a lunge boku, people let me they sell them. But the one let me they carry it now, you don't boku, people let me press there for use the one way they use na lunge now. They call that one in English yabas na me what? Because it did a boku back. If we not stop anything in there, whatever we do, the people are not going to produce. If they produce for seller, they don't produce no more for sale for you each one no more. Just the people are applying they produce so, but for the you each one no more they produce because they're not able to sell again. Because what they go sell, the English one they boku all over the country. If we self, I like na wala rest in the country. English rest no they go say rest no day. Rest no day in the country. I like na the wala rest they go take the boku they go say rest no day in the country. So these now some of the things they will go to do for stop the import of boku things they will say we able to produce. Now we able help feed the nation and stability of the country. Peace na the country, stability. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Well, let me just take that part there. My dear friend, Mr. Tailu, I appreciate the confidence we get in me and Mr. Mengot. But I would forget this analogy, hospital analogy. When you sick where you go to hospital, they have to make diagnosis. In fact, sometimes when you begin to feel bad, you go in a hospital, you go in the lab, then take your blood, then try to make some diagnosis. Depending on which in the blood results show, you get other referral, maybe to your general practitioner, or what we call a family physician, or maybe to a specialist. And then that specialist, they subject you to additional diagnosis. Then he also go refer you to someone who specializes in whatever your problem is. It could be surgery, it could be a particular type of surgery. It's the same thing we are doing here. They do, and I'm grateful that we are being thanked for the diagnosis. But that doesn't necessarily give us the expertise to get into the fray and try for implement policy. There are a lot of brilliant people who studied policy. I think that the willpower not there. Now that doesn't mean if I'm put in a position of trust, if Mr. Mango is put in a position of trust, we're not going to carry with duty efficiently, with honor. I'm not saying that. We'll get the basic level of education for be able for run any responsible ministry. But we don't necessarily have to get into the fray, because you diagnose, you turn it over to another person who do further diagnosis and get to the right people, and we claim, say, they specialize in certain things. Okay, I think with problem in Sierra Leone, we not to put the right people in at the right place. And we are too hung up on too many things that we're not to produce for the country. I can give an example. We get a very brilliant young minister, a former minister of education, I think the chief minister now, Dr. Senge, went to one of the best universities in the world. I understand, say, in specialty, now prosthesis. I think there's a market for it. There's a potential industry for that specialization there. But not to that they go into. They go into politics. As soon as they come, then politicize them. Now he's a politician and a minister. Even though we get all law where we don't say you can serve as a minister without becoming a politician. But you see, we care less for the country. We want to give you party membership before we make you a minister, thereby compromising you in many ways, shape, and form. So we get the intellectuals here, then they come with a PhD, but they are not put into the right field where they can be productive. And what good is, there's a saying, the taste of the pudding lies in the eating. So if we not be productive, now this gentleman we just called just now, because people can get that idea there. For say, once we start producing something, we're not for import. Well, I'm not an economist, but I can tell you say that's a wrong policy. Because if the fact that you do produce something not necessarily mean you for stop for import them. Would you see that this country, America, then they produce almost everything. And then they import almost everything. Then they even import beef, everything, you name it. Because the way you keep the market competitive, the way you keep pricing down, the way you maintain good quality is by competition. So the moment where you stop for import, which is any government will do that and they then go hurt the economy. The moment where you stop for import, and thus you just want the locally grown product, that product they will go become careless. We're not going to try for produce quality product. Now where we get importation of other goods, we will compete with we own. And we're not saying anything wrong. America had and they make cars, but there are cars coming from everywhere, from Korea, from other countries, from China, from Vietnam, from Japan. So Americans could have easily said, we don't want importation of cars because they make all kind of cars. We don't want importation of anything because they make them. But it doesn't work like that. Economists will tell you that will destroy your economy. The moment you start for import, because you grow something in abundance, and then you will ruin your economy. The way you save your economy is by producing quality product. And you're not going to produce quality product unless there is something for compete with, for comparing with. And that one day we'll get for understand. So that call we call, I mean, I can understand where it's coming from, but that is the quickest way for kill your country economy by saying you don't want to import something you want to produce. We're not going to end up with inferior quality because there is no need for improve the quality of it. And then prices will end up being high. Then you go to ask, why price so high? Because and competition hold down prices to a large extent. So, and then I mean only to the economics down the I know, where I learned, I think from the college days, maybe economics 101 or 102 or whatever, long, many years ago. Yeah, so back to you, Mr. Mengot.
I think we have a caller on the line. Let's take that call before I go ahead.
Okay. Hello, caller. Where are you calling from?
Yes, this is for the again. I just want to give me last bite for today.
Okay, sir.
The one day we can tell una say or can tell we say, una out solution them where this. Even the people already in governance, they know the solution, they know the problem, how to solve the problems, but they are lazy thinkers, and they want for go the cheaper way or the quicker way, thinking that is the best way. Like Guinea Safa, once or two we can already democracy, they ask and say, oh, Mr. Minister, you will talk against the IMF conditionality and the World Bank, but today you are so comfortable with that. Now you see, well, now they think this way, so make them use them. So as if even the next 6 finance minister they come, nothing will change. You see the problem? They know the solutions. They know how to solve the problem, but they don't want to do it. They want to do the lazy. Now look what happened. Salon, even the revenue base just they drop. Now, then they can't see for $36 million, then they can increase fuel, and they forget about the cost of that on poverty in the country. Just for $36 million, my goodness sake. This is now in the one so for the people and for $36 million. The IMF work out this condition, then they give them $20 million. So for this $20 million, what they say, they give them. Now they can add poverty to the people. And they know these things. That anybody knows, say, the only way you go become prosperous in business, because government are business, now where you invest. Without investment, there is nothing that's going to come out of it. Then thing they only give you all, now like way they live in welfare, now the UK for instance. You don't go ever save money. Then they give money here, oh, they give stamp there. You just a struggle for come through. But if you go work, you get one or two jobs. You don't need government things them. So this not the problem. This now look what will happen. Then go the airport will give me one of the top revenue people will be the greatest revenue. Now we don't lost that revenue because other people are not can invest, and anybody would invest and they didn't benefit. And you see what I talk about investment. If the government they able to make sacrifice, slash all the relevant ministries, they invest that money. They don't need person for can spend $200 million per year. But what if now we invest there, now we dey get the profits from now till the end. So this not the whole problem of Sierra Leone. We see they know how to solve this problem, but they want to go the shorter way. That means the lazy thinking say, oh, look, we can let them give you this money, let them give you that money. But that money, they can't in bulk. That money they can't with way then they can't go again. And you can't live with people in poverty. So I just want to make people they know see the salon problem will be solved only the time when we get a president who will take the sacrifice. These ministries and agencies they form, they don't help the country. They try for like say the load don't heavy, they put on your shoulder, you put on your back. So the load still heavy because they carry them to go. They reduce the weight. So this is the issue. So I just want to make this the one they tell you so hey make a consultation. They are just trying to make sure they put it in a corner for this discussion. Now we discuss them, then they hear it. If they want to do them, well, if you find if they do them, but if they don't, well, that's the other thing. So I mean, last bite is I want to give for today. Thank you very much, guys. You're doing a good job.
Thank you, Mr. Mustafa. Thanks a lot. Yeah. Mr. Mengot?
Yes, I mean the next stage we will go. I think I will address this next stage with two concerns with the no raise. Number one, a regular contributor, Mr. Atotari, they talk about. In fact, he even elevates me too. He say if you be president, maybe a chief minister will do a lot of things more. Anyway, and that is good compliment, but he also talk about going back to do some work in Sierra Leone. Just a short passing, I will let you know, say, my whole background at transportation. I've been in transportation business for a long time, starting from Sierra Leone. And I still contribute to transportation. And at one time, as you know, I've been doing this program, a transportation program, in terms of public transport reform where they pan. But one time, when we don't go far, we will do program on that. We come back to the next thing where the president talk about, when I one of the big five. We don't do it one. The second one, I know they go in the sequence where he put them. The second one are revamping the public sector. And that revamping the public sector, it gets a lot of things for do with the structure, organization, institutions that will get for do that. Let me just give people the way the system runs now, because a lot of people don't talk about. For instance, now we get 29 ministries or 29 ministers, and then ministries and there you get issues that will cut across the ministries. That was the same reason why the president been telling us we set up the provision for chief minister. And he tell us say the chief minister will be somebody who will coordinate all activities of ministries and also the agencies that were under them. Like if we talk about the transport, in transport now you get the Ministry of Transport and Aviation, you get agency like the Sierra Leone Airports Authority, you get Civil Aviation Division, you get Sierra Leone Road Transport Authority. So all the one they done. The key problem is the minister is the political head. You get the permanent secretary in the ministry, what we call like the chief executive, nine the vote controller. Then you get the divisional directors in. Then you get the civil servants in. So how do we empower them for them able to develop the government agenda? I can always talk about three things. You talk about chain of command. Because the minister there, he is there or she is there to make sure what happens in cabinet or decisions taken in cabinet trickles down to the other people. Then. The permanent secretary is there as head of the mission, where now they work with the accountant and the ministry for control the finance, prioritize the projects. Then you get competition among the different directors. Then. So how do we manage the public sector? How do we train them? How do we give them skills? In the past, when I entered the civil service in Sierra Leone, I've been able to go through a selection process where then they advertise the job in a gazette, you go through the Civil Service Commission, you are interviewed, you join the civil service, then give the first way and they do. Now you Kingsley Davis Commission of tell you about your salary, the civil service code, and you will get some kind of continuous professional development. We get civil service training college. For all that been there. So how do we empower the civil service for letting go deliver what's in the government agenda? Do we go back to what we don't know, what to adopt from the colonial system, or we develop new system and bringing together the tertiary institutions, the colleges, the university, the technical education. Because when we talk about the public workforce, we're going to talk about the technical arm of the workforce. So what's your take on that, sir?
Well, let us start with this. I guess this is the appropriate time for talk about the youth unemployment, not so, or the youth employment.
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because that's
Now,
another pillar.
Yeah. Government after government after government in Sierra Leone. You know, I've been talking about youth employment, youth unemployment. But what policy, practical policy have they put in place way beneficial to the youth? In fact, the youth unemployment is getting larger and larger and larger because they are just simply talking. And now we know the major area where they absorb the youth them in terms of employment or ability to earn a living. Now the transportation industry will involve keke and the other similar types of transport, you know, where one doesn't even know if these guys are going into these things for themselves, but we know say most of the keke and Okada riders them and drivers are young people, very young people. Okay, you don't see people my age driving keke or Okada. But what policies, if government they try for talk about that, then they address this issue every time. But they will just take a banking system. I go back to the banking system. There are no provisions to enable some of them people here. Like what I talk about government secured loan for the bank provide an opportunity for the young person where say, okay, I want to go into business. I want to drive Okada. We go able to go to a bank or some financial agency and borrow money. But the irony of all ironies is that such a system exists only for people who are from overseas. And I want to target any particular group of people. Plenty of you say one has a negative feeling. But we do not say the bank they give loan to certain people who are not even, who are strangers, who are not even citizens of Sierra Leone, but they are conducting business in Sierra Leone. So I'm saying the indigenous Sierra Leonean should be able to get a loan. You know, if you meet all the requirements, then for set policies. But I have spoken to some bankers in our country where tell me, say, oh, you get a loan, then go default. You get a loan, then go run away, go hide in a village. You get a loan, then go in a neighboring country. But those are some of the risks that go with the territory. Even in America, there are a lot of defaulters on loans. There are people who don't pay back. There are people who have scorned. So it will not be anything unique to Sierra Leone. What we need for do now for try for meet the challenges with bankers them. Instead of just get a free ride, get all them privileges here, coming up with no resourceful ideas, then for be a challenge as to how they too can contribute to the economy, you know, instead of just let the system just go that way. Because the banking industry can play a vital role to this youth unemployment. Again, the question is policy. policy. If we don't get policy, nothing is going to happen. And we can't forget people, not to people that will get PhD alone. I get the utmost respect. Please don't get me wrong. It's not easy to earn an academic PhD. I think it's hard work. It takes commitment. But I don't think people in the getting degree are just for show. You should be able for use that degree day for enhance yourself, your community, and if possible, your nation. Then I'm in your problem. The profession to which I belong, I can see 1,000 things I can do for Sierra Leone that are absent, without a doubt. I can see ways I can improve the legal system. I can see many ways. So I'm not just talking, So me think so you go, you get them PhDs here. When I come back, like President Kennedy said, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. These are the kind of challenges them I want for they will meet. Not to this thing about coming up, get certificates on the wall, like I complain about the lawyers in Australia. You get a lot of young lawyers who they come America for can't get LLM degree. Just for go plaster on the wall for show this academic stuff. No ideas. No, if then they represent client in a court, no practical training in terms of courtroom representation or trial efficiency. These are all bad for a society. The academics is one thing, but for God's sake, and again, I'm so disappointed at vast majority of the lawyers from Sierra Leone who come here. This country get one of the best legal system in the world and is part of the British ancestry. Okay? You would think our lawyers would come and want to see and observe and pick up certain things. They are not interested. A large amount of the lawyers who come here to America, they don't even step foot in the courtrooms or try to know anything about the legal system. But they want to become attorney general. They want to become solicitor general. They want to become high court judges. They want to lead judicial panels. They don't get exposure. So what do we end up with? Garbage in, garbage out. Because these guys are not exposed. So we within an advanced country now, would take what you call continuing legal education. Because education not finished just when you get a certificate. It doesn't end there. But in Australia, it ends there. No continuing education. If you're a doctor, you go, no continuing education. If you're a lawyer, when you go back home, no. And they don't want to implement things like those. Even if you suggest to them, because there's too much demand. You see? So these are some of the things. So it's not always with the politicians. Even the professions.
I think that's a good point to hold. We have one caller on the line.
Okay, caller, where are you calling from? Hello, caller.
Hello, I call from UK.
All right, sir.
UK.
Thank you.
A question I just want to ask a question.
Okay.
I don't know why education just based in analysis. To how to see, the base, they reflect in actions, all those things. So you go find out, say, to me, like we just like a student all the time. Although we get degree holders, we get master's degree holders, we get scientists, whatever, we get account, a lot of degree holders, you name them. But we just like we always like the students all the time. Because when you do college, you know the problem. And you find a solution how to solve the problem. When you don't come to college, now you don't get the degree now you want. So can't solve the problem. You don't know the problem again. And when you don't carry age, you don't become a pensioner, maybe in America or abroad, whatever, UK, whatever. Then you begin to tell the young one how to solve that problem there. Now this time I get confusion. So now the same analysis way we do with our college, where you don't become a pensioner back, and that same analysis they continue. And he go tell now that Bobo how to solve the problem. And Bobo back we've been at college, interview they give the problem, nobody solution. He said they can't solve it, we don't study done. Even they come in action. It just go back in explanation how to solve the problem. They don't understand. So we don't become a pensioner, now tell me they don't know how to solve the problem. Tell the Bobo back for solve the. So why we education just based in analysis? I just want to understand. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. We appreciate your contribution. Yeah. So please continue for listening to the program. Mr. Mengot, since we're getting close to time, let me turn it over to you and see what else you have in mind.
Well, I think the other thing we don't touch on, we don't talk about empowering the one of the things that I think so we need to look at now is this idea of technology and innovation. I think that's one way very interesting we'll come up with, because according to the government, the very minister where we don't get as chief minister, now he creates this Directorate of Science, Technology and Innovation.
And where is he now?
He is now the chief minister.
Yeah.
So when you talk about technology and innovation, you remember say they don't split the Ministry of Information. Now you get Ministry of Information and Civic Education. Then you get Ministry of Communication, Technology and Innovation. For God's sake, this is an era of technological advancement. And for law gets technology come in different forms. For instance, one of the things that we people we talk about is access to internet services. We get a particular challenge. That challenge is we already have Sierratel, the Sierra Leone telecommunication, when we remain they'll get competition from the other mobile service providers. And we know say if you want to use technology for increased technology, you get for increased access to cheap, affordable international gateway on internet. So how do we use technology in several areas? For instance, in my own field of transportation, I remember there was somebody who went to Sierra Leone and went to Freetown and said, oh, he was surprised that there were no traffic signals. We've been trying to put traffic signalization for controlled traffic. There's a lot of teething problems. I know we go come to a program where we'll deal with that. We also need technology we can to learning. Even in universities, they're doing well because when they see universities and they get tech hub, it's not all doom and gloom. Even secondary school, my own alma mater, two of them, both St. Edwards and Prince of Wales, the old boys then get computer lab where they do. But how do you coordinate all these things? And more so with governments. Things like e-learning, e-commerce. We get problem with the currency now. Now we get two currency the way they're side by side. Most countries then they go about now focusing on electronic money transfer and all that thing and day. And you need communication. So communication innovation is very important. So how do we put this together? We get the users, the providers, and we institutions them where they provide the training. Forget that technical workforce where they move from analog to digital. I think Lord talk about that towards this last end of our project.
Yeah, well, keep going.
Even in law, even in law, you need technology, because this idea of case law, recording laws on the courts and everything, record keeping, all that's now innovation and technology. So perhaps you can use that now for as they can say, we not a provide solution, but use that out and they can actually help now your area of specialty for able round up.
Well, Naya, normally, because I watch trials where they take place back home, I think the judges are doing too much. And then not only that, there is a risk of when so much note is being taken by the judge, part of which becomes the record of the court. When the judge in notes, not a part of the proceedings. Now, for just help the judge to make an evaluation, an assessment at the end of a trial, where you want and direct the jury. So he will go back, he search a note, or if lawyers have an argument or some objections, they will go back and take a note. But I seen Sierra Leone will get this heavy dependency on the note of the judge, which becomes mostly the record on appeal. Well, it's risky in the sense that we need forget every court should have a transcriber. When you talk about modernization, when you talk about electronic uh, 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 um, uplifting of the system, every court should have a court transcriber where they take everything down as it's been said, you know, so nothing is left out. And that should become what you call the court record. So on appeal, nothing is left out. The lawyer will be making appeal. If now issues of fact or a ruling on the law, they will go back and look at the entire. Well, first of all, they go order the record from the transcriber, and then the transcriber will get a period where he will produce them for you. For then that record is taken to the judge with the opposing counsel. Then the judge will settle what will be considered the record on appeal. But yeah, now judges are being, and I think it even delayed the trial because the judge get for do their note here for take so much note, and so that is slow because how fast can the judge write? Unlike a transcriber, where they take everything in shorthand or longhand or by dictation, you know. So these are some of the things we talk about: innovation, modernization, you know, technology. Well, we're not to digitize the system as it ought to be. I'll give you another example. I do immigration law, which is mostly what I do now. You will be amazed at the sorry, I call it sorry condition of we official papers them, like birth certificate, marriage certificate. You know, these things come handwritten. Birth certificate, handwritten. Marriage certificate, handwritten. In the early years, when you present that to the immigration officers, and can look you and say, "You got to be kidding! This can't be official. Is it really official?" And you say, "Yes, it is." Well, how come it's not typed or printed? So, what is stopping us from lifting or upgrading the system where birth certificate should not be printed? The only side where you see writing outside the official, the sign. What is stopping up for making a marriage certificate handwritten? But these are some of the documents they want to get back home in this day and age, 2013. It's terrible. You see? So there are a lot of areas. But again, I think, say, this is the problem we're missing in Sierra Leone. Because of the lack of exposure of, let me say, the civil servants, the judiciary, to a much more sophisticated system, they are just content with what they get. And every now and then, when the American Bar Association or maybe the European Union come up with ideas, I probably want for send money for expose them to certain things, they are willing. But we need somebody for take the initiative, because there are a lot of good things we can make the delivery of services more efficient, you know, and more impressive. But say today would write official papers by hand. I mean, that is unbelievable, but yeah, that's what we keep saying. You want birth certificate from Sierra Leone, it's handwritten. You want marriage certificate from Sierra Leone, it's handwritten. And these are some of the things. There are many other documents that where one could talk about. But what is stopping us from improving on anything here? Now we say we just know one come of age, you know. So I think we're out of time. So I don't want to keep on talking. So I will go back to you, Mr. Mengo.
Yes, thank you very much. I think again, by reference to our listeners, I think I want to suggest that in closing this program and our usual program, starting from today, now make suggestions as to one of the things we can improve the lives of people and way forward. So with this pathway end, I think say one issue when we go like for recommend to the government will affect everybody, both Sierra Leoneans at home and abroad, especially we in the diaspora. Now this documentation of land digitization. For God's sake, we're very small. We don't get a land commission now. Why we not go get a register of land for now get record so that when you go buy land, you get official information on title. If the government can do that for we, it will help a lot. Because we get a lot of cases that where people are on there for 10 years fighting land cases. And plot numbers, we can use GPS system for so many things. So let's look at land first, because land is not only good for just construct property. It's also good for the agriculture, what they talk about in terms of land for provide feed yourself. It's also good for industrialization, and it's good for so many things. So I think saying that I know why left with the government for let you think about now. So I don't get much for saying now. I just want to say thank you very much to our listeners them. As usual, we appreciate in our comments them and some of the things that they bring to we. And we also make sure say we try to be as neutral as possible, but in Sierra Leone you cannot avoid politics all the time. So with that, from Surrey in the UK, I would say goodbye to everybody. Do have a productive week. As a transport man, be safe. Make sure say you know put yourself at any risk or danger in transport. And we look forward for joining we the next time. So with that, I would say have a peaceful and productive week. Hand over to my colleague if he wants to final goodbye, and then we can now draw down the curtain. Thank you.
Well, just from mimic what you say, you being a transport man as a lawyer, I would strongly encourage those who don't have much faith in the legal system to still understand the fact that that's what we have for the moment. Now we're all job for try for improve them. So, but don't avoid the courts. Because I then get the responsibility for judge. If they want to make a ridicule of themselves, let them do it. But don't let that hold you back. Go to court. And you mentioned this young lawyer, or it may not be that young after all, Mr. Mara, where they try to get information from the ECSL through the, which we will call the Freedom of Information Act. I think that's a good way to go. But I think if I back that up, me don't know which in the procedure. But if the law say if I produce that document, if in an official document, what the electoral law might not say, but the Freedom of Information law might say, that's a way of getting in the court system and get the court for compel ECSL for produce that. Like I said, there are many ways. Lawyers, part of we stock in trade and creativity, creative thinking, So there are ways. And we also, where the Constitution is badly written, which we smartness, we can able for cover some loopholes where the Constitution not cover. So I strongly encourage the lawyers to find ways to go back to court, and Mr. Mara might be up to a good start. Get the court for compel through the freedom. I don't remember Mr. Mango. What's the name of the act again?
Right to Access of Freedom Information. Right to Access of Freedom Information Act.
Okay, so let Mr. Mara press the Right to Access of Freedom Information Act. Make it for force ECSL for produce the document, because even if it's not written in electoral law, if the law is there that says now the government paper, if I produce them, they file a motion to compel. These are some of the things. So I strongly encourage the lawyers. I'm rooting for you guys. Be brave, be creative. Thank you very much. Until next week, ta-ta.